Now, the greatest radio shows of all time.
Suspense.
The Shadow Node.
Washington calling David Harding, counter-spy.
Classic radio theater.
The Great Gildersleeve. Fibber McGee and Molly.
Dragnet. Gunsmoke.
The Lone Ranger.
Now, step back into our time machine with your host, Wyatt Cox.
Good evening, friends of the Inner Sanctum.
Scary stuff this hour, and we're not just talking about the news. An episode of The Sealed Book from 78 years ago, May 6th, 1945, Stranger in the House. And we thank you for joining us on this Saturday, 6th day of May, 126th day of the year, 239 days remaining until we get to 2024. The American Bible Society, founded in New York City in 1816, James Gordon Bennett Sr. published the first edition of the New York Herald on this date in 1835. In 1861, Arkansas seceded from the Union. 1863, the Battle of Chancellorsville ended indefinitely with the defeat of the Army of the Potomac under General Joseph Hooker by Confederate troops under Stonewall Jackson. 1877, Chief Crazy Horse of the Oglala Sioux surrendered to United States troops in Nebraska. Congress passed the Chinese Exclusion Act on this date in 1882, banning Chinese immigrants for over 60 years. The Eiffel Tower officially opened to the public on this date in 1889 at the Universal Exposition in Paris. In 1935, Executive Order 7034 created the Works Progress Administration. Now, in 1937, the German Zeppelin Hindenburg caught fire and destroyed within a minute while attempting to dock at Lakehurst, New Jersey. This recording, what was supposed to be a routine feature piece for local radio stations, was recorded at the time of the Hindenburg disaster. This is Herb Morrison.
This is one of the worst catastrophes in the world. Oh, this place is 400 or 500 feet into the sky, and it's a terrific crash, ladies and gentlemen. The smoke and the flames now, and the frame is crashing to the ground, not quite to the mooring mast. All the humanity and all the passengers.
Morrison and engineer Charlie Nelson had been assigned by WLS Radio in Chicago to cover the arrival of the Hindenburg for delayed broadcast. Well, at that point in time, you didn't broadcast recordings over the networks. They had no facilities for live broadcast, even though the results still became the prototype for news broadcasting in the war years that followed. The event had no effect on the policy. Recordings not regularly used until after the end of World War II. And it was it was very dramatic and very heartfelt. 36 people killed in the destruction of the Hindenburg. Accidentally, we should say. 1940, John Steinbeck awarded the Pulitzer Prize for The Grapes of Wrath. Also, in 1941 at California's Marchfield, Bob Hope performed his first USO show. 1942 on Corregidor, the last American forces in the Philippines surrendered to the Japanese. 1945, Axis Sally delivered her last propaganda broadcast to Allied troops. In 1954, Roger Bannister became the first person to run the mile in under 4 minutes. 1974, at a press conference, President Ford addressed opponents of the Vietnam refugees being resettled in the United States.
I understand the attitude of some. We have serious economic problems. But out of the 120,000 refugees who are either here or on their way, 60% of those are children. They ought to be given an opportunity.
President Ford said, and quoting, "damn mad at the adverse reaction of the American people to Vietnamese refugees." And I've got to be honest, I would be mad too. Because, we were talking about less than 250,000 refugees. But here's what I'm going to tell you. At that point in time in 1974, people didn't give a damn about the U.S.-Mexican border. And yes, those of you who say, well, that's just... No, it isn't. We have played periodically on our local stations, and I'll put the podcast up because it may not have survived the transition. But I will put the podcast up about the CBS special that was done in 1954 entitled The Wetbacks. And I think it's something you need to listen to. This going back, almost 70 years, we had an insecure border. And it's now getting out of control. Anyway, at a press conference 1 year later in 1975, President Ford addressed calls for a congressional inquiry into how we got into and out of the Vietnam War.
I think the lessons of the past in Vietnam have already been learned. Learned by presidents, learned by Congress, learned by the American people, and we should have our focus on the future. And as far as I'm concerned, that's where we will concentrate.
And the lesson should be, don't repeat those mistakes. The president, and yet look at what's happening with our involvement in foreign wars now. President called the war sad and tragic in many respects. 1981, a jury of architects, sculptors unanimously selected Maya Ying Ling's design for the Vietnam Veterans Memorial from 1,400 other entries. Former Arkansas state worker Paula Jones filed suit on this date in 1994 against President Bill Clinton, alleging she'd been sexually harassed by him in 1991. 1996, the body of former CIA Director William Colby found washed up on a riverbank in southern Maryland 8 days after he disappeared. 2004, the series finale of the TV sitcom Friends aired on NBC. 52.46 million viewers, the fourth watched television series finale in history. And a sad story from 2013. 3 women missing for more than a decade found alive in Cleveland. Ariel Castro taken into custody, having allegedly kidnapped the ladies. Passing away on this date, Henry David Thoreau, author, philosopher, UK King Edward the Seventh. Also, L. Frank Baum, the writer of The Wizard of Oz. Educator Maria Montessori. Actor Monty Woolley. And we'll have an episode, I believe, coming up of his radio program, The Magnificent Montague. Perfect for such a pompous person. Also, trombonist, composer Kai Winding. CIA Director William Casey, actor Charles Farrell, actor Wilfred Hyde White. Also, Marlene Dietrich and George Lindsay Goober. Let's see. Born on this date in history, psychiatrist Sigmund Freud, explorer Robert Perry, actor Rudolph Valentino, New York restaurateur Toots Shor, you hear a lot talked about him on many shows. Actor Raymond Bailey, you remember him as Mr. Drysdale in the Beverly Hillbillies. Pianist Carmen Caballero. Also Stuart Granger and Orson Welles, all born on this date in history. Bob Seger, still making those night moves at 78. Mary McGregor, torn between two lovers at 75. Game show host Tom Bergeron, 68. Actress Roma Downey, 63. Actor George Clooney, 62. Colt Cabana, pro wrestler, 43 today. From Friday Night Lights and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Adrienne Palicki is 40 years old. Also from Precious and Empire, Gaborni Sidibe is 40 years old, and from Terra Nova and the 2019 remake of Aladdin, Naomi Scott is 30 years old. Those just a few of the people celebrating the 6th day of May as their birthday. If this is your birthday...
Hi, we're the 4 freshmen, and we just want to say... Happy birthday to you!
And from 78 years ago, May 6, 1945, The Sealed Book, The Stranger in the House, on this Saturday, Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. 26 episodes of The Sealed Book aired over Mutual between March and September of 1945. And we do have a number of them, but we don't carry a lot of them because they're kind of kooky, spooky. You know what I'm saying. They're odd shows. Some people refer to it as a melodramatic anthology series produced and directed by Jock McGregor for Mutual, and the host that you will hear is Philip Clark. All righty, if we go back 78 years to May 6, 1945, and The Stranger in the House.
The Sealed Book. Once again, the keeper of the book has opened the ponderous door to the secret vault, wherein is kept the great sealed book, in which is recorded all the secrets and mysteries of mankind through the ages. Here are tales of every kind, tales of murder, of madness, of dark deeds strange and terrible beyond all belief. Keeper of the book, I would know what tale we tell this time. Open the great book and let us read. Slowly, the great book opened. One by one, the keeper of the book turns the pages and stops. The strange story of a cursed and evil spirit. A spirit that threatened the peace and happiness of a young married couple. A tale called Stranger in the House. Here is the tale, Stranger in the House, as it is written on the pages of the sealed book. The tale was told by Jane Barton herself.
From the first moment I saw Wickford Manor, I was filled with a sense of uneasiness, almost fear, a fear I couldn't explain. To all outward appearances, Wickford Manor was just another old, staunchly built colonial house, the kind you see through all New England. Roger, my husband, was delighted with the house. Its beauty and remoteness won his heart from the beginning.
Say, take a look at that beautiful staircase. Look at this magnificent fireplace in the drawing room.
Yes, it is beautiful, Roger.
It's just the size house we need, with 4 rooms upstairs.
4 rooms upstairs? How do you know, Roger? The agent never mentioned how many rooms the house had.
Didn't he? Well, there's only one way to find out. Let's go upstairs and look. Come on, Janie.
All right, Roger.
This house would require very little in the way of repairs.
But it hasn't any electricity, Roger.
Oh, well, we could use lamps until a line could be run to the house. Look, Janie, there are 4 rooms up here.
So there are. It's as though you've been in this house before.
Yes, I have a feeling I have. Well, perhaps that's the reason I like it. But, darling, you've been ever so quiet since we entered the house. Don't you care for it?
I don't know. It seems unfriendly.
Well, if you don't like it, then we'll keep on looking until we find a house we both like.
Oh, nonsense. I've been married to you too long not to know you've got your heart set on this place. We'll never find anything nicer. Now, that room with the southern exposure will be our bedroom.
Oh, Janie, you're wonderful. And we will be happy here. I know we will.
Because I loved Roger and wanted to see him happy, I buried my fears and agreed to the purchase of the house. The first evening in our new home, as I went about the drawing room unpacking our belongings, I suddenly realized how cold and clammy the room was in spite of the roaring fire. Beyond the feeble light of the oil lamp, the room was thick with fog. Suddenly it seemed to engulf me like a shroud, and I felt the icy coldness of the grave upon me. My heart pounded in my ears. I felt faint. After what seemed like eternity, the fog rolled away. The light of the lamp became brighter. I felt unbearably alone. I rushed out of the drawing room. As I opened the door to the study, I saw Roger seated before the fireplace. He was staring unseeingly at the ashes of a fire long since gone out. Roger. Roger. Roger!
What? Oh, it's you, Jane.
Roger, is anything wrong?
Wrong?
Yes, you seem so far away, remote. It frightened me. Do you smell perfume in here?
Perfume? Why, yes. It's the perfume I gave you for your birthday, isn't it?
No. No, it isn't my perfume. It smells like narcissus.
Yes. So it does.
How strange. Roger, what were you thinking of when I came in here?
Why, I don't know. My mind was reaching out for something. Something in the past. But it was also confused. It was as if I were wandering in a fog.
Wandering in a fog?
Yes. Well, Jane, you're so pale. Aren't you feeling well?
I'm just tired. It's been rather a tiring day.
You go up to bed, Jane. I'll be along later.
All right, dear. Don't forget to turn out the lamp when you come up.
I won't.
I left the study and Roger. After tossing in my bed for hours, I fell into a fitful sleep. And I suddenly awakened to hear the clock in the hall striking the hour. It was 5 o'clock. And Roger's bed was empty. Quickly slipping on my robe, I left my room and started down the stairs. As I reached the foot of the stairs, I stopped. But to my astonishment, I heard Roger's voice in the study. I slowly approached until I was at the door.
Who are you? This mist. If I could only make you out clearer. So difficult. The mist obscures your face. Who are you? Why don't you say something?
Roger! Roger! Unlock the door! It's Jane!
What's wrong? The mist, it's coming between us. I can hardly see you. Oh, don't go. Come back, please. Please come back.
Darling! Darling, please unlock this door. Please! Roger!
It was 5 o'clock in the morning when Jane suddenly woke and found Roger locked in his study. He was apparently talking to someone, although there could be no one there. Hysterically, Jane pounded on the study door.
Darling! Darling, unlock the door, please! Roger! Oh, Roger.
What is it, Jane?
I was so frightened. Who are you talking to?
Talking to? I don't know. I must have been dreaming.
Oh, yes. Yes, you must have been. There isn't anyone in here. Roger, the scent of narcissus. So strong in here.
Yes.
Much stronger than it was at midnight. Roger, what were you dreaming about?
It was night. All around me was a mist. There was a woman.
A woman?
Yes. I could barely make out her face in the swirling mists. But it was a beautiful face. The most beautiful face I've ever seen.
Did you feel you'd seen her before?
Yes. I couldn't remember where.
Oh, what do you make of it, Roger?
Make of it? Oh, it was just a dream, I suppose. What else could it have been?
Roger said it was a dream. But in his heart, I knew he believed it was more than a dream. During the days that followed, he'd pace incessantly in the study, paying no attention to me, living only for the coming of twilight. And when night did fall, he'd lock himself in the study, forbidding me to disturb him. Hours would pass, and then suddenly I'd hear him talking to her, begging her to come closer, pleading with her to speak to him. At last one night I couldn't stand it any longer. When he began talking to her, I knocked on the door of the study until he opened it.
What do you want? I thought I told you I wasn't to be disturbed.
I must talk
you
to you.
motley fool! She was about to speak to me for the first time. Then you knocked on the door and caused her to vanish.
Oh, Roger, you're not in love with her. You couldn't be.
But I am. There's never a moment I don't think of her. Wish that I might see her.
Oh, what you're saying is madness. You can't be in love with her.
May 6, 1945, the sealed book, Stranger in the House, on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. The news from 78 years ago today follows these important messages from your favorite station. Just when you thought it couldn't get any better, Mike Lindell and MyPillow launching the MyPillow 2.0. Now, when Mike invented MyPillow, it had everything you could want in a pillow. Now, nearly 20 years later, he's discovered a new technology that makes MyPillow even better. Of course, the patented adjustable fill of the original MyPillow, but now with brand new fabric with a temperature-regulating thread, it's the softest, smoothest, and coolest pillow you'll ever own. Say goodbye to tossing and turning and flipping your pillow over in the middle of the night. And more great news on the MyPillow 2.0 buy one, get one free offer with my promo code Wyatt. MyPillow 2.0 is 100% made in the USA, 10-year warranty, 60-day money-back guarantee. Go to MyPillow.com, click on the radio podcast square to receive the MyPillow 2.0 buy one, get one free offer. Use my promo code Wyatt or call 1-800-928-4715. I'm Wyatt Cox. Thanks for tuning in to this Saturday edition of Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox, an episode of The Sealed Book, as it was originally broadcast over Mutual on Sunday, May 6, 1945. In the newspapers of that Sunday 78 years ago, these were some of the headlines. The German 1st, 19th, and 24th Armies of at least 200,000 men and possibly more than 400,000 surrendered unconditionally to the American and French in Austria and southwest Germany yesterday, and the last major European pockets of resistance in Norway and Czechoslovakia were on the verge of capitulation. For the vast majority of American and British troops, the European war was over. Meanwhile, former French premiers Eduardo Daltier and Paul Reynaud and generals Maurice Gamelin and Maxime Weygand freed from months of German political imprisonment yesterday when 2 battalions of the 36th Texas Infantry Division fought their way into Eiter Castle. The world-famous 4 French leaders were among a number of other famous persons who were liberated. Among them, a sister of General Charles de Gaulle, a former head of the French trade unions, and tennis champion Jean Barastra, who in a melodramatic fashion got out of the castle at noon to bring word to American troops of the plight of those imprisoned. American troops have killed 33,462 Japanese and taken 700 prisoners on Okinawa since their April 11th invasion. That from Fleet Admiral Chester W. Nimitz announcing prisoners included 297 labor troops, the figures to May 5th. The mystery of Adolf Hitler's fate remained unsolved by Red Army soldiers in Berlin who still had not found the German Führer's body. But Dr. Hans Frisch, propaganda minister Goebbels' lieutenant, was quoted by the Free German station in Moscow yesterday as saying that Hitler's body has been hidden in a place in which it will be impossible to find. It was Fritz who told the Russians that both Hitler and Goebbels had committed suicide. Europe, which had been a battlefield for 5.5 years, comes to the end of the firing, confronted with the grim specter of a continent with a food shortage, which probably will mean more acute and widespread hunger in the first winter of peace than in any winter of war. The war continued too far into the spring for Europe to feed herself through the coming winter from her own crops and produce. There is yet time for some planting, which will help to meet the needs. It's being done and desperately, with men and women dragging the plows. But with farmland still deadly with mines, with power-driven equipment gone, and horses virtually vanished, and with 8 to 10 million displaced Europeans still in Germany, alone, the yield will be too small. Torn between joy and disbelief, Mrs. Helen Goad McDowell, petite 23-year-old blonde, finds herself married to 2 servicemen, was frankly confused yesterday at War Department information that her first husband, officially declared dead last October, is alive in a Rangoon hospital. She said, "I will never believe it until I hear from him." And then, belying her expressed conviction, "I'm very happy, but I don't want to hurt Mac." She referred to her second mate, Ensign Robert A. McDowell of New York, whom she married in Miami last December after she had become convinced that her first husband, the 27-year-old bomber pilot, Lieutenant Harold W. Goad, had been killed in the crash of his plane in Burma in 1943. The War Department advised her Friday that Lieutenant Goad was alive. Those some of the day's top news stories as reported in the newspapers of Saturday, May 6, 1945, on your radio, The Sealed Book, which continues now on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox.
She's from another world, a phantom, an evil ghost.
No, she isn't evil. She's beautiful. So beautiful I'd give my life for her.
Roger, listen to me. You must come away from this house and from her. She's cast a spell over you, and it can only lead to disaster. Roger, we must leave this house at once.
No, never.
I insist.
Get out, you hear? And don't come back. I'll never leave her, never.
Dr. Smith, in view of what I've told you, do you think you can help me?
Now, you say, Mrs. Barton, that when you drove out to Wickford Manor for the first time, your husband seemed to recognize the house?
Certain things about it, yes.
There's a history to Wickford Manor, though few people are familiar with it.
A history to Wickford Manor?
Yes. The house was built in 1811 by Martin Wickford for his bride, Harriet. A year later, Harriet's sister Isabel came to live with the Wickfords. She was a remarkably beautiful woman, so beautiful that Martin Wickford fell in love with her, and she with him.
Then what happened?
Well, one day, while Martin was hunting in the mountains, he was killed in a fall. When his companions brought his body back to Wickford Manor, they found Harriet, his wife, dead. She'd been poisoned.
Poisoned?
Yes. At the sight of Martin's body, Isabel went to pieces and confessed that she had poisoned her sister. Before she could be arrested, she committed suicide in the study.
In the study?
Yes. In the years that followed the tragedy, Wickford Manor had a succession of tenants, all of whom left after a brief residence.
You mean they saw her too?
Well, the tenants made no claim of seeing anyone, but their fear of an unknown element in the house led them to leave.
If the other tenants never saw her, why should Roger see her?
Mrs. Barton, you said that your husband seemed to know many things beforehand about the house.
Yes, I recall joking with him about it. I said it was as though he'd been there before.
Perhaps he had, long ago, as another person.
As another person?
Yes.
You mean Roger had once known Wickford Manor in some previous life?
How else do you account for his remembrance of things that he'd never seen in this life?
Oh, you're trying to tell me something, Doctor. What is it?
Perhaps your husband and the spirit of the woman Isabel are able to bridge the gap of time and space because they had once known each other in another life.
Doctor, you don't believe that Roger was Martin Wickford?
I don't know. What is happening at Wickford Manor is beyond the knowledge of the living. But this I do know. We must return to the manor at once, for the spirit that's abroad in the house is one to be feared more than death itself.
Please come closer so I can see you better. Oh, you're beautiful. Beautiful. Won't you tell me who you are? We have met before, haven't we?
Yes. We've met before.
What? You spoke.
I've waited so long for you, Martin.
Why do you call me Martin? My name's Roger.
It was Martin. Then.
Then? What do you mean?
Look at me, Martin. Look into my eyes. Don't you remember me?
Yes, but where?
Think, Martin. Think. Time is the barrier between us, but we shall surmount it. Think back into the dim past when you lived in this house and we loved each other.
Isabel. Isabel!
Yes, Martin. Isabel. Do you remember now?
Yes, Isabel, yes. I remember everything up to the day I went hunting in the mountains and fell. What happened to me, Isabel? What happened to us? To our love?
Don't think of that accursed day, darling, but think of the future. Our happiness together.
Oh, yes, Isabel. Our happiness together.
Roger! Roger, please open this door. Roger!
Martin, she's come back.
Yes. Darling, don't go. Don't leave me.
I must, Martin. I must. We could be so happy together.
Come back. Please come back.
Roger, please unlock this door, please.
What do you want? What did you come for?
Roger, this is Dr. Smith. Doctor, this is my husband.
What the devil did you bring him here for?
Roger, please. I thought perhaps he could help us.
Help us? I don't need anybody's help.
I must warn you, Mr. Barton. The spirit of the woman you see in the study is an evil one that will lead you to disaster.
I don't need help from you or anybody else. I'll get out of this house. Get out, both of you.
Doctor, we must do something. We must.
We shall, but not tonight. I must have time to think about it. You'd better return to the village with me.
No, I don't want to leave him in the house alone. Something might happen to him.
Very well, then. I'll return late tomorrow afternoon, and when I do, we shall take action.
Isabel. Isabel, where are you? I'm alone now, darling. Please come back.
I'm here, Martin. I'm here.
Oh, yes, I see you now. Promise you'll never leave me again, Isabel.
I don't want to leave you, darling. But that woman is trying to come between us.
Jane?
Yes. She hates me, Martin. She will come between us if you don't get rid of her.
I tried to make her leave, but she wouldn't go.
Then that leaves only one thing to do.
One thing to do?
Yes. Come. We must hurry. It's almost dawn, and I'll have to leave you soon. Look at her, lying there asleep, so defenseless. Yes. Go ahead. Put your hands around her throat and squeeze.
Oh.
Hurry, Martin, before she awakens.
Who's there?
Answer her.
It's Roger.
Oh, for a moment I was so frightened. What time is it?
It's just dawn.
Hurry, Martin, I must leave.
Yes.
Roger. Roger, why are you looking at me like that? Oh, no, Roger.
Tighter, Martin. Tighter until she stops struggling and is still forever.
Isabel, don't leave me. Isabel, where are you? Isabel, please don't leave me, Isabel.
Roger, she made you do it, didn't she? Oh, Roger.
And the conclusion of the sealed book, Stranger in the House, from May 6, 1945, comes up following these important messages. You're listening to the Saturday edition of Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. Jack Webb on Sunday's Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox, an episode of Pat Novak for Hire going back 74 years, pre-Dragnet, to May 7th, 1949. The Wrong Shirt leads Novak to murder and grief. That'll be coming up on Sunday's Classic Radio Theater, but right now the conclusion of the sealed book, 78 years ago, May 6th, 1945.
And now to continue the story as it is written in the sealed book. As Jane finished describing to the doctor how Roger, urged on by the sinister spirit he called Isabel, had nearly strangled her, the doctor spoke.
And then, Mrs. Barton, you say your husband stopped choking you and ran out of your room and down to the study?
Yes, Dr. Smith.
Oh, I should have known better than to let you remain in this house last night. Don't you see? This Isabel knows that if he murders you, he will then join her cursed spirit forever in this house.
Oh, look. Look, it's growing dark out. Soon she'll appear to bewitch him again. Doctor, we must do something.
Very well. This woman, Isabel, has been denied the peace of the grave because her sister's blood is on her hands. She belongs neither to the living or the dead, only to this house. If we could get your husband to leave, perhaps it would break the spell she's cast over him.
Yes, but he absolutely refuses to leave.
Then we must force him to. I could very quickly give him a hypodermic and render him unconscious.
Yes. Then we could carry him away.
And to make sure he never returns to this house, we must burn it to the ground before we leave.
Yes, we will burn it. And the evil that's in it.
And if you'll lead me to the study.
All right, Doctor. Have you the hypodermic ready?
Yes. Now, when your husband opens the door, just gain his attention for a moment. Long enough for me to give him the injection.
Yes, very well. Roger. Roger, open the door. I want to talk to you.
What do you want? Why has he come back to this house?
He's come to take me away, Roger.
To take you away? Yes. Good. I'm glad to see you. What have you stuck me with? What's that in your hand?
Just the hypodermic, Mr. Barton.
A hypodermic? What are you up to? You're trying to take me away from this house. From her. Well, I won't go. I won't go. Do you hear? You'll...
Oh, Doctor, quick, he's falling.
I've got him, Mrs. Barton. Now I suggest you take that lamp and smash it on the floor.
Yes. Let's burn the place down to the ground.
Yeah, that's it. Now you'd better help me carry your husband out of the house. In a little while, this house will be a raging inferno. He's regaining consciousness, Mrs. Barton.
Will he remember what's happened?
I don't know.
How are you, darling?
Oh, hello, Janie. Oh, I had a terrible dream. I'm so confused.
You've been very ill, but now you're going to be all right.
Of course.
Oh. Where am I?
You're in my home, Mr. Barton.
Yes, darling. Our house burned down last night.
Burned down? Oh, that's too bad. Well, we only had one night in our new home.
One night? Oh, yes, of course, Roger.
Well, Mrs. Barton, in spite of the loss of your home, I think you were very fortunate. For there are things far worse than fire.
Yes, Doctor. And I can never thank you enough for breaking the bridge between the past and the present.
What are you two talking about?
Oh, nothing, darling. Nothing at all. Roger, you've been humming that all day.
Well, I like it.
But you can't carry a tune.
Oh, nonsense. I've carried this tune for 300 miles, and I'll carry it the rest of the way to California.
Oh, what a trip this is going to be. Roger.
What?
Do you smell something?
Yes. Good night air.
No, I don't mean that.
Well, what's wrong with you, Janie?
Don't you smell it?
What? You mean that perfume?
Yes.
Seems familiar. What is it?
Narcissus.
Narcissus?
Yes. Oh, Roger, we haven't escaped from her. She's here in this car.
Bart, it's Isabel. Think, darling. Think.
Roger. You look as though you're listening to her.
You do remember everything now. Don't you, Martin?
Yes.
Darling, we must get rid of her. She's trying to come between us.
Yes.
Oh, Roger, you mustn't listen to her.
Once she's gone, we'll be together forever, darling.
Yes. Forever.
Roger. Roger, why have you stopped the car? No. No, don't look at me like that. Roger, no. Stay away from me. You
A few hours after Jane was found strangled in the abandoned car, state police arrested Roger Barton and charged him with murder. Strangely enough, as Roger was being hanged for his crime, witnesses at the execution noticed a strange scent of perfume about the gallows. Some people said afterwards that it was narcissus, and they remarked on the expression of joy on Roger's face as he died. And now, keeper of the book, before you close the great volume, show us the tale we tell next time. This one. Ah, yes, a weird and incredible tale of a wife who was being blackmailed because of her past. But because she did not know the identity of her blackmailer, she suffered 1,000 times over. The tale is called Out of the Past. Be sure to be with us again next time when the sound of the great gong heralds another strange and exciting tale from The Sealed Book. The Sealed Book, written by Bob Arthur and David Cogan, is produced and directed by Jock McGregor.
May 6, 1945, The Sealed Book on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. Thanks for making us a part of your day. Thank this station, support their advertisers, would you please? Our webpage is classicradio.stream. You can stream all 21 hours a week of Classic Radio Theater there. You can also follow our social media links there. You can also see lists of places where our shows are available by download, by podcast. And, of course, you can buy me a copy, as many of you have done in the last week, and we greatly appreciate that. classicradio.stream. Thank this station. Tell all your friends the greatest radio shows of all time are right here at this spot on the dial. Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox on your favorite station.